All right, next item, there's been conversation about adding a parliamentarian for our meetings. And that's been a recommendation by a couple of different aldermen. We did a little bit of, just a little bit of research. Patrick, a parliamentarian, I know in the sense that if you're looking for someone who's a quote-unquote traffic cop during discussion for a board item or an agenda item, that's not what a parliamentarian is for. A parliamentarian would interpret different things like if an amendment was brought forward or other things that are classically interpretations of Robert's Rules of Order. Now they could have the ability to have a timer and the ability to notify so the board sees what time is allowed left during open discussion on an item. You know, they can have a red light, green light, let you know your time is concluded. They can be a point of reference, but they're not getting involved in political discussions or anything like that, or those type of things. Would that be about right?
No, Mayor, I agree 100%. I don't think the mayor is the chairman of the meeting and can control the meeting. The parliamentarian would be, as the mayor said, that individual who would be called upon if there's a question about, as I say, minutes over seconds, and what order was taken first on a motion, and those type of things for clarification. And I'll underline what the mayor said, because a couple of you mentioned it about time, but also whatever time is agreed upon could be the person that starts that clock in terms of the time, and when, and almost, you all have been involved with Toastmasters before. You could do a green light, then it would go to yellow if there's a little bit of time left, and then certainly red would be the end, so the individual would know what time they have before them, and that could be the responsibility of the parliamentarian as well. But they're difficult to, I'm sorry, I talked to Ms. Landers, Betsy Landers, many of you know her, who was a parliamentarian at the state and I think national level. And Betsy is offered to help look at what state and local chapters are available for people who serve that role as parliamentarians, and would they be willing to do that? And I need to follow back up with her.
And it's not uncommon. Our Germantown Municipal School Board had a parliamentarian, and it was Ms. Landers. The Shelby County School Board, which you served on, and we had a 23-member board, had a parliamentarian. Matter of fact, even when it shrunk to either a 7 or 9-member board, retained that parliamentarian as well. And they both, those two that I had met, know one personally, were able to be helpful in maneuvering those meetings and making sure those meetings stayed efficient and functioning. So it's open to discussion. Yes.
Does the county commission have?
Yes.
That I do not know. The county commission.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Well, because someone reached out to me that said he was at one time a parliamentarian for the county commission. I'm going, okay, I didn't think they had one, so I was just sort of listening to him.
Mark, I believe that they do.
Yeah, I'm going to get. He said he did. I mean, he's retiring as from Shelby County, and I'll be glad to give you his name. Okay. But anyway, I don't know that we. What are other people's thoughts? I mean, I was one saying, hey, probably a good idea. I mean, maybe we could try it for a short time, see if it works for us.
We don't have a position. It's your meeting.
I saw you jumping in, and I got.
Just simply say, I think it's a good idea to try. I mean, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of you to be able to chair the meeting, keeping the time, keeping Robert's Rules of Order, if you will. I mean, I'm willing to try it. I think it can't hurt, and so, but love to know anyone else's position.
So I am very much in favor of this. I don't even think that there needs to be a trial run. I think this is something that our board needs. I think that not only, I'm not even looking at it towards the chair of our board as far as something to alleviate time issues or things like that. I think it is for all of us who are familiar, unfamiliar with Robert's Rules of Order, and I'll even look to myself. Possibly when I have been less than patient as far as making a point of order because I did not believe my colleague understood kind of what that process is, that this could be an education for us to be able to move together more effectively, more efficiently.
I'll make a motion that we.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind, so I don't think any of us are proficient with Robert Rules of Order, but occasionally we try to apply those rules without having a good understanding of how they're supposed to be applied. In my opinion, I think we are trying to actually use strict rules when we don't really have the proficiency to use those strict rules, and it's actually hindering our meetings and cutting down on our efficiency. I personally think if we relax the rules and gave each other a little bit more leeway when we're speaking, we'd actually get through a lot quicker. Now, are there going to be things within a larger statement that one of us may think is irrelevant? Maybe, but you never know where that's going to lead down the road in the discussions. And so I'm perfectly willing to give Alderman Yonda and Alderman Owens and Alderman Gibson and Alderman Sanders a lot of leeway. Now, if somebody goes completely off the tracks and we all recognize it, then I think we step in and we raise a point of order and say, you know, this isn't relevant to our discussion. We give that alderman in question an opportunity to explain why it is relevant. But we don't try to use the rules to cut down on our discussions, because that's creating a lot of animosity on our board that's not necessary. I think if we give each other the opportunity to speak, then we take our votes. The citizens on every side of an issue will appreciate it. We'll get done a lot quicker, and we'll see a lot less fighting. I'm not sure that the parliamentarian is necessary unless we are really going to turn the screws to each other and try to use the rules to actually hinder the work of one of our colleagues. And that's my opinion of it. If we're gonna really try to be strict with the rules, then yes, it would be helpful to have a parliamentarian who would be able to interpret those rules when we have a question. But I think we can find a way to get along and compromise without paying a parliamentarian. I just have an unease, I think, with paying someone if we can give each other an opportunity to see if we can get through this without paying a parliamentarian.
So good conversation. However, the words off the rails, it's very subjective.
Sure.
And I think that when we use words germane to the point, it adds structure to our conversation that is very, I believe that it's needed to be able to have thoughtful and deliberate, reasoned conversation. And so I think that to say that a parliamentarian or those rules are to hinder conversation, hinder dialogue, it is, I think, the opposite of that. It is to really fine tune, to make certain that the speaker is very thoughtful with their words.
But that's not what a parliamentarian will do. The parliamentarian will just interpret. It'll still be the business of the chair to make those rulings. Now, I guess we could ask them to interpret whether or not something is germane, but there again, you know, you're looking to the alderman that raises the point of order and then the opinion of that parliamentarian to make that decision. And I just don't think that's fair. I think things that you may consider germane or that you consider not to be germane are in fact very germane to me and where I'm going in the discussions. And I just think we would be better served if we gave each other a little bit of leeway. Because it seems to be that's really why we're wanting this parliamentarian, is to kind of step in on those issues. But that's really where our problems reside. So if we can take away that problem of us disagreeing over what is germane and what is not germane, then there's not so much of a need for a parliamentarian. What are we really going to accomplish, I guess, by having a parliamentarian if we can agree to just disagree on issues sometimes and resolve it with a vote?
Do you mind if I ask?
Go ahead.
David Harris, do you mind if or Mr. McCarroll, if I could ask one question? The definition of germane. I mean, it means.
I suppose you know.
To pertain to. It means to.
We'd have to look.
Well, so I would assume that it means germane to the topic, and that agenda item, it is it means that we are confined within that. We don't get to go off the rails.
Yeah, we're not supposed to go off
We are
topic.
supposed to be talking about that agenda item. Does it not mean that we can have some broader discussion? Yes, but it's got to be within that confines. It's not a, and this is an exaggeration, it's not a free-for-all time for us to have that conversation. Again, just my thoughts as I welcome yours.
Oh, yeah,
So
I'm sorry, yeah,
You brought up, Alderman Massey, the point of you felt like it was our repeated breaks in discussion or calling for a point of order that may cause some animosity. And it's just my humble opinion that the consistent and repeated attacks against the administration are what causes animosity with me. And I see that over and over again. And I'm trying to put this as politely as I can. Sometimes not the entire truth is told from your point of view. And I understand you're trying to make your point. But words like puppets and hypocrites, and these are just, allies of the, these kinds of things, that doesn't bring us together. And so when we're trying to work together for one common goal, that's when I say point of order, because I feel either I'm insulted or that again, it's just consistent and repeated attacks on administration that I've said it before, I grow weary of. And I'm not certain, again, that a parliamentarian is going to solve that. But I sure wish we could move forward, all of us move forward and get past some of that. Just my thoughts.
I agree. I've noticed, I'd like to see if there's opportunity to have a little more dialogue between the aldermen when we're discussing an issue, instead of just being able to ask staff a question, what have you. I know we do our due diligence before we get to the meetings. We've asked questions of staff and think we know what we want to do, but when we get there, if I could get a little more of your point of view or yours, I might, you may sway my opinion. I might come to the meeting thinking that I was not going to vote for something, but if I could have some dialogue back and forth with someone on the opposing side, you may convince me.
And that's I think that's at the genesis of how you spend your minutes in conversation. And I will tell you, if you are making your questions known, and I am able to respond in a way that, again, it's not pointed, where I'm not singling out Alderman Owens, I really want you to hear what 5 things that you would do to counter this, but to really say, it's almost to where we can respond to each other without that direct, pointed, I'm not going to use the word attack, but to where it is, again, but I think it has to be filtered through the conversations that we have with our staff and as we talk to the points or to the merits of the agenda item.
Well, we have to find a way to do that, though, without being confined to those times. I read these long statements because I have a limited amount of time, so I try to get in all of my points, put everything on the record, because, like we've talked about in the past, what we put into the record can be reviewed later on. Whether it's an appeal to one of our boards or to the courts. There are reasons that I read those statements into the record. And you may not like all the points that I'm making. I understand that, and I apologize if I've offended you personally, Alderman Owens. And in the future, I will work harder to not say things that might offend you, or say it in a way that's not as offensive. Okay, but sometimes I say those things, and I will sometimes be required to say things that are offensive to one or more of you, just because it's the manner in which we disagree. There may be something that you don't see through my eyes or the citizens that I've talked to eyes, but I don't intentionally say things to be offensive to you. Sometimes it's just the way I see things, the way I feel the point needs to be conveyed. And so we have to, I think, have an opportunity to have that discussion, because in my opinion, we'd be better served is I said something and you said, well, you use a point of clarification or point of information, and you had asked me, well, Alderman Massey, what do you mean by that? And I would gladly stop and explain what I meant. And we would work out our differences in that moment rather than letting them simmer, because there's not enough time for you to take time away from me and have that good communication. And I think that's what Alderman Sanders is saying. We need to create rules that allow us to have this dialogue during the moment, because we're letting the moment pass, and all this anger is simmering, and we're holding animosity against our colleagues, and it's not good for the city. I agree.
I think a point of order or point of clarification, it actually, it speaks, it doesn't go back to an individual, and I'm looking to our chair, the mayor.
It should.
I think that it goes to what that specific rule is. Correct, Mike? I mean, a point of order, point of clarification, it is to, it is not to, it is specific to the structure of the meeting. It's not as far as to ask a pointed question of a colleague.
That's correct. Well, there's a lot of good discussion. Is there, I'm not sure what I'm hearing, but it seems like I'm hearing we're moving toward a parliamentarian. Is there?
Well, I would be happy to make that motion.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
All right. It's been motioned and seconded, and I would just ask that.
I'm gonna do this on a trial basis.
That'll be fine.
Well, what if we just take a step back, though, and we relax the rules a little bit and see if we can't learn to get along in our meetings a little bit before we have the parliamentarian? Because if we're going to do it on a trial basis, what if we keep doing things the way we're doing, but on a more relaxed basis, have more open conversation? And then if that doesn't work, we agree, hey, we're just not going to get along, and we're going to have to get a parliamentarian to come in here and help us go through these rules, and we're going to have to interpret them strictly. If that's the case, then I'll be on board, because I was, I'm on the bubble with the parliamentarian as it is, but I think it's going to actually hinder our relationships, and I think it's going to hinder the work of the board with the way I fear it will be used.
Well, I would say that I've had 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of it not working the way that I had hoped that it would, and whether it's on a trial basis or not, I am hopeful that we as a board could come back together. If it is not working, that we can address that then. But it's not my hope, and I hope I can speak to each of you to say it is not my intention by asking for a parliamentarian to make things worse. It is to make things better.
It's just about making sure the rules are interpreted well, not the emotion part of it. We can all agree to get along, but the parliamentarian does not measure what getting along means. They just measure what the rules are. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay. Would you mind amending that friendly, or with the administration would ask, would you say to have on a trial basis for 6 months till June 30th?
Move for the addition of a parliamentarian till June
30th of
2019.
That way it puts us on a record for
Okay.
administration as well, and then the board can revisit it at any point in time after the process begins.
And Mayor, I would say a commitment to each of my colleagues here. This is a new board. This is going to be a new year. My commitment is to work towards making this work, and that I will actively make certain that I put my patience hat on when I need to, and that we can respectfully hold each other accountable whether we agree or disagree.
It's been motioned and seconded.
I did not hear the second.
I did by Alderman Young.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do we have any idea what kind of expense we're looking at? How we would go about finding this individual?
I'm going to track that down. I don't know the expense associated with it.
And then he's gonna come back to us with it.
Well, shouldn't we wait to get that information before we approve it?
I would not think it would, it's not going to impact the budget.
It'll be an hourly rate, I would think. In my estimation, you would probably think this might be something between $50 and $200 an hour, I would say, and then maybe, but we'll get that information. It will not impact the budget, the $173 million budget, dramatically, obviously. But we'll report that to you as well.
Do we know what standards we're going to use to select the person?
We we will inquire on what other boards have done to find parliamentarians, and we'll bring someone who has some form of certification.
I'm sure it'll be something that this body will as well.
Yeah, okay, so maybe if the board approves it and has the
Sure.
right to vote on it.
That'd be fine. I mean, that's fine with us as well. It's been properly moved and motioned and seconded. Go ahead and call the roll.
Alderman Sanders,
Yes, since it's a trial basis.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
and Alderman Younger.
Yes.
All right, we're moving forward with the parliamentarian. We'll report back. Just as a point of privilege, real quickly, we were talking about meetings, and we have been talking about our meetings moving forward. And in our last meeting, because I felt like being here close to the end of the year, some people may not have had as many board and commission reports. This was started, there's nowhere in the ordinance, it's not been it's been a practice. Do you want to continue this practice of reporting on your boards and commissions? Because if you don't feel that it's necessary, we do not need to continue that as something moving forward. Again, it was just for an opportunity for you to talk about your boards and commissions. Sometimes people do not have any reports. Some people have extremely detailed reports. And so it's kind of hit or miss depending on the month and the amount of activity. We brought that forward a few years ago, and again, there's nothing in our ordinances that guide that. Do y'all have any thoughts? Do you want to continue
I
that?
have an observation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just being on the citizen side, I think I met you for coffee one morning, and I thanked you for starting that practice, because as a citizen that doesn't go to all the commission meetings, and they're not all televised, or where a citizen has the convenience of seeing it at home or listening to it on a podcast, or they have to go. So I really appreciated it as a citizen to get the snapshot view every 2 weeks of what went on in these meetings. And sometimes they would mention something was coming up at the next meeting or down the line, and I'd start paying attention to agenda so I could attend in person. That's just my personal preference. I think the citizens might enjoy having the benefit of the information.
Well,
Other
no,
thoughts?
that's I concur with everything that you said. I think as liaison, and you'll find this, it gives you an opportunity to tell what the important work of your commissions and boards are doing, and the excitement that I think often staff feels in conveying that, whether it's Safety City or Recycle Day, not Recycle, Amnesty Dumpster Day, things that I think we, even as aldermen who are very much part of that, and we're informed that there will be things that will come up that to take note. And so I hope that our citizens, as they become more engaged, are doing that as well. And it sounds like they are.
Mayor,
Yeah,
what if we created an agenda item for new business where it wouldn't necessarily pertain just to, and that new business probably wouldn't be the right place, but some opportunity for aldermen to discuss whatever issue of the day they think is relevant. And I'm not saying that we go on long discussions, but you just say, by the way, I want to thank the Public Safety Education Commission for the work they did on working on the Christmas float. And then that would be the opportunity for whichever alderman want to to talk about what their commission is doing, to interject that. But it expands the scope of what we can discuss at that point. And it also doesn't identify each alderman as, do you have anything to discuss this week? Because I can tell you with the Germantown Athletic Commission and the Great Hall Commission that meet maybe 4 times a year. A lot of times I won't have the opportunity to have things to discuss for those commissions, and people at home see it and say, well, he never gives a report. That's because I truly didn't have anything to
We
report.
can always share a compliment or something about a city event or something. There's no during the liaison reports.
Well,
I mean,
it's-
that's not uncommon to share. So I think we're trying to talk about streamlining meetings. I would ask, if you want to continue this practice, and I do it as well. I say for the office of mayor, citizens to be heard is 3 minutes per person. There's 6 of us. That's another 18 minutes. Today we started at 5:30, we probably won't leave here till 9:30. Many of our meetings that I've gotten feedback from our community, our meetings at one point in time were 30 minutes to an hour and a half. Now they'll be, I'm just estimating, now sometimes they'll be between 1 and 3+ hours. So we want to make sure that we give great information out there, but we also want to be respectful to the people that are in attendance at the meetings, respectful to staff, and respectful to you as aldermen. So, if you want to continue this practice, I would just ask that you limit it to 3 minutes or less, and not to time yourselves,
I'll
but
do
just
better on
be
that.
respectful that, we want to, I'm not pointing to you, I'm just saying.
No, I know,
all of
but
us.
I hear myself.
And then at the same time, if you have limited to share, if you want to say, something complimentary, and that's generally what this time is for, is to point to things that are either successes from our boards and commissions or activities. That's obviously welcomed, and we'd like to hear, our staff would like to hear it more, and the commission members would like to hear it more. And it's a time for us to thank those 250 people that volunteer for us and give all their time, so.
I know it's not the same, but we do the weekly wrap up, or the, what is it called now?
Here and there?
Here and there.
Yeah.
I always think that that's kind of a good, I can pull a lot of things from that.
Well, we can also discontinue that if you like, because that's something that we brought up, I guess, 4 years ago. Mayor Goldsworthy didn't used to do it. If that's something that you guys don't want to continue, that's okay with us. It's really your ability to share information with the community and what you did during the week. But I'm glad you brought it up in that sense. But that's something that you guys can omit if you wish, or continue it as well. So
I get a lot of feedback from that,
Okay.
just as
Me
far
too.
as, it kind of jogs people's memory. I didn't realize I could call you about the flower beds that are creeping into, I get a lot of neighbor situations there, but anyway.
I get it. Any other discussion?
I'm going to interrupt.